Okay, let's talk about the actual finals now, because you were there, you were on the analyst desk. It was a really, great to actually be back on LAN. It's the first LCS final that's been on LAN since summer of 2019. So really important moment. It ended up kind of, it was exciting. I do think it was weird. It was not what anybody expected, especially with Cloud9 struggling so much so early.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about game one to kick things off, because this showed, I think, a lot of the issues that I see with Cloud9, but also why I'm hopeful about the future of this team, because it was so dominant, right? They were on track for this like 22-minute soul. It was looking so good. And then the problem with running a composition like the one they were running with the Kalista is that you have to play it fast and you have to get that soul. You have to push the objectives. And you see what is still, I think, some synergy issues that played out over the course of this series. One synergy issue was Blaber's aggression and kind of like hair trigger flash on Udyr that ended up costing them that soul. And then eventually, even though they fought back pretty well considering their composition, ended up costing them the game in the long run. And the second that played out over the series is it's not Fudge's fault, but Fudge, it was like the team would engage without him being in position. It like he was like moving into position or about to TP, and then they would just, it just looked like the comms there, especially when Fudge was in like pushing a lane in a different part of the map, were a little bit questionable. And so these are both synergy and style issues that I think you can work on as a team. But I think like they really were a major factor in this series and caused C9 a lot more trouble than I thought they would.
Yeah, for sure. Like, this is the type of comp that I think would succeed, like, in an LPL environment. We probably wouldn't see a Seraphine like first pick in an LPL, but like if but like this is the idea where you have an early game lead, and they were diving on stacking waves. Like I said, like I think that they punished the hell out of top lane Alphari on top, like they did throughout the series, and then they like destroyed them on a bot dive. I think when they messed up for sure was on a random like. What was it? Vulcan, when they were trying to swap for top lane turret, and then Vulcan just kind of like got caught, but then they recovered. And like you mentioned, Blaber goes in, and I don't think they were on the same page of if they wanted to fight that. Seraphine, for sure, if they wanted to fight that, then Seraphine should be in position for an ulti, right? Yep. She should just like instantly look for it and they could fight for it. But then, like you're right, Blaber just like took a lot of damage because they were not wanting to fight, like they weren't on the same page, and then they ended up losing those fights. And you can't have that. I think that's really good footage for them to look back on if they want to succeed at MSI. But like, yeah, in the moment that shit happens, you're like, okay, well, this is not the comp for you.
No, you're right. Like the weird thing is that it was getting caught out, then kind of pulling back, and you're like, oh, okay, well, they stabilized, no problem. They're just going to go. They're going to do what they do at the top tower, and then they're going to rotate over to the dragon, get the soul, and then it's game over. And then Blaber decides, no, I'm going to flash bear slap somebody, and the rest of the team has no idea that he's going to do that. And so when you're playing a delicate composition like this, everybody has to know that you can't take those fights, right? You're very powerful in the early game, but there's very low margin for error. And it was beautiful the way they were playing it out at first. I think it was almost like a perfect early game for them. So I was really impressed. That's why I was like, they were up 4-0 8 minutes into this game. They had like killed the bot lane, killed the top lane.
Right, this is from somebody you'll know from CSGO, DDK, who's now in Valorant, but comes from CSGO, right? He actually had the best way of describing what you're talking about, Monty. So people know, because it was actually something you actually made, like sort of proliferated within early League of Legends, the premise of like the win condition, right? Here's what pro players still don't actually discuss. What are our losing conditions? What DDK said is this: there's certain scenarios in a game where you have to know what players would lose you the game, and that's how you avoid them. Like, it's not just that you have to know what the ideal scenario, but so in this case like that, it's the same as the obvious example, even as a layman, would be if you're playing like some sort of fucking poker comp. It's like, well, we can't get this certain person caught at this point. And, you have to, that sort of has to be in the back of your mind, like a checklist, in the same way as if you were the jungler or the support, you're thinking in the back of your mind every 5 seconds, check the map, look at the other lane, like it has to be part of your protocols, as you call it, things you go through in the mental checklist. Because even in this final, like we say here, the team that ended up winning LCS had basic premises to what they wanted to do that they weren't actually like adhering to, essentially. And by the way, to spin that into a more general topic, unless you had something on that, basically I want to actually ask this, because no one else seemed to discuss this at all aside from Cloud9 losing and then coming back to win. Dude, the most underwhelming part of this playoffs to me was where the fuck was Blaber? This is the guy we've just given the MVP because he smurfed on the whole league, could play any champion, did all the stuff he was doing last year in spring, just super aggressive, just dominate every other jungler, always jungle gap. When I watch these games, just like I criticised TSM, brother, you're playing against a sub, and the sub is Greg. Like, you're the MVP. Now's your time to literally win the finals for your team. Mate, it's not that he was even bad. He just wasn't Blaber. Like, where's the guy who pops off? Where's the guy who takes over the game? He plays way more conservative in playoffs, I think, unfortunately.
I think partly is,
you were talking about.
Probably is like, I think the drafts of like the game 3 draft, I know we'll probably get into that one. That one just for me was not good. Like compositionally, and it wasn't gonna work well for him. Like if he Nocturne ulties in, like not only will like Thresh be there for a lantern on his target, probably be the Aphelios, GP ultimate to separate him from his team, Orianna ball, like there are just so many things that like, oh, he's just gonna die. Like that's just what's going to be. And also, like, yeah, he respected Armeo. Like, I think Armeo is a good player, even though he's a sub, like 100%, right? He's a sub that came in, but he like knew what his role was, and that's super important for someone to just come in, know their role. He like, I think he messed up like 2 times this series. I don't know if this was one in the series or if it was in the previous one where he like just died on wave, like trying to hold on as Udyr, and the other one was game 1 when he tried to like help Sion pushing the wave and then just died. So like those were 2 bad deaths. But overall, I think Armeo played well accordingly. And then Blaber, game 1 was playing for team fight, and then like that comp just like limited him. Game 3, he was just limited by the comp as well because like he's trying to play Nocturne Rel except like with no follow up. So
I do think you have to give some big credit to Team Liquid's coaching staff here, because that draft where they just blind the GP is such a fucking big dick move, and I loved it. I really enjoyed it because they're just saying, they put their dick on the table, just slam it there, and they're like, you have nothing that can beat this. So what's interesting about that is I think Cloud9 got confused because here were their choices, guys. Their choices were pick something that actually synergizes, that can dive with Rel and Nocturne in the team fight, or Fudge gets shit on in lane. And so they had to make a very weird decision, and they chose safer lane pick. We'll go with the Karma, but the Karma is not great with the rest of that composition. Generally speaking, Victor and Karma kind of want to kite it out, and Nocturne and Rel kind of want to go in there, right?
Yeah.
So I think they put them in an awkward position. And then on top of that, Liquid basically denied the first 3 Nocturne ults, did nothing at all, like actually nothing. Sometimes like it would be like Jensen, they saw Jensen in mid, he pops the ult and then Jensen just vanishes and he can't even like use the ability to get to Jensen. Or they were just trying to triage the other lanes because bot was getting slammed by the Aphelios and Thresh. So in my mind, I just really enjoyed Liquid's game plan here. And I think they forced Cloud9 into a really, really awkward position, which is why Cloud9 banned the GP in the next 2 games. Mm-hmm. I loved it. I thought this was great from TL.
Yeah. I think GP is one of those picks that like, he's actually remarkably strong as a laner. Like if you have a composition that's like a good team fight comp and you want to play towards the GP, like GP can do well in lane. Playing away from GP has its issues, but like, yeah, basically like, you can go Karma, you can go like a few picks into him, but like if you want to play for lane, Karma is like a good pick. But like Karma Victor, when your composition wants to dive in, like you just said, like good luck. Good luck.
Well, I mean, so the answer to that question is, right, if you want to succeed, Blaber must get fed in the early game so that he can one-shot somebody by himself. That really didn't happen, and I think it was pretty doomed for Cloud9 beyond that point. And we're not even considering the fact too that it's not even the picks. It's the fact that Alfari is so fucking good at GP too.
Yeah.
He's the best GP in NA. So I wouldn't want to play into that. Right. So you're putting it on a power pick in the first place. But I just thought it was really interesting because I think they showed a draft strategy that most other teams picking both solo lanes, blue side, second rotation would have been unwilling to do, but was very effective when you get Orianna GP in this scenario.
Hey, and you get to counterpick, your dual lane. Like you can just send your dual lane, like get them to see the full composition. The moment you see Nocturne, I mean, people have been loving Nocturne. TSM, was early picking Nocturne. Like Nocturne is a flex, and in this game, I thought like, oh, he's flexible into mid lane as well. The only thing, like, you can maybe put him into Orianna, but like it's not going to be like an ideal situation. But but yeah, like the moment you pick Thresh and have like a good range in the lane versus Kai'Sa, like that was really ingenious from Team Liquid. Team Liquid, I think, like had a really like a great game plan that put them in a position to beat C9 with a sub. Like, talk about being given shit, like not having Santorin for your fucking finals and you know the semifinals before it. So hands up, you know, a lot of appreciation to them and Armeo who came in. But,
for sure, mate. By the way, the real hero of the fucking weekend obviously was the coaching staff for Team Liquid, because whatever they told the team for these two series, like they didn't even play like a team that looked like they had a sub. They looked like they were like they really thought they could win these games, and if we just do these certain things, we're going to be in them. And so, like, I have to say, when I saw Jack do that statement on Twitter when the news first came out. Like, listen, every coach would do the same video, unfortunately, in the modern day. They'd just be like, no, the series isn't over and we believe in our sub. Like, listen, but the problem is that could all just be a bunch of nonsense you say for the camera. Dude, it actually looks like he believed it. So fair play. And that makes me think, by the way, he probably did a similar, pretty good speech that was very rational, down to earth, and connected with the players. And the players bought into it because, dude, they almost won the LCS with a fucking sub. That's crazy.
Yeah. I actually thought that some players really stood out. For me, I thought Jensen had a great series. Even though the beginning, the first game was really rough. It was a rough ass first game. Like his Orianna in game 3 was insane. I think his he had like a really good, I think it was TF game. Oh no, the TF game.
No.
The Victor was the one where had like 10 kills.
The Victor is another one. The TF was a bad draft, by the way.
So
that one was a bad one.
By the way, you know what's crazy about this series is that as we talk about game 2, there was a real possibility that this was a 3-0 TL because C9 almost threw the ever-loving shit out of that game.
They did.
Because they had such an insane advantage because they were up a huge amount. The TF had done nothing into the mid game, which is if your TF isn't doing anything by the mid game, it's an uphill battle, right? And then the combination of like C9 fighting and not even using their like Bronzodia composition ultimates, like they were dying without even using Malphite ult or Orianna ult, right? And even when they were using them, like Perkz' Orianna was bad. And so I was shocked that game was even competitive after the early game.
It was insane. I think Team Liquid should have won, which is the craziest thing because Twisted Fate is trapped in this comp. He cannot go top lane in the Malphite as long as if Malphite plays respectfully early, then suddenly that's like such a hard dive. He can't go bot lane versus like Rakan and Cleanse AD carry. Like you'd have to set up for it, and if you set up like well enough, maybe you can get the dive, of course. But like most of the time, the TF is in a really rough spot. And then finally they got a TF port on to the jungle when they're going on Udyr, and then they die for it. So like this was like one of those moments where I was like, okay, so this is an easy win, like just comp alone for C9. And then they catch them out top lane once, they catch them out mid lane again. Like Sven's just fucking dying to these plays. I was like, okay, wait a minute. This is a huge lead for Team Liquid. They should literally win off this lead. And then there was one fight in particular that I remember around Baron, and it was it was so fucking okay. Imagine you're Sivir, you're the AD carry, you're walking into this object like you don't have much vision. Sure, you put your ward in Pixel Bush, you see a Malphite just standing there, just looking you down. Like, I need to get past this guy. We probably should like focus him down. Like, at least play for the fight if we can't take the objective. And basically, he like point blanks ultis alongside the Hecarim ulti. Sivir has flash. If you can flash this, the team can play around it. At least play for the fight. And they lose this fight because Sivir just gets one shot. So that one was a rough one. The setup, I'm pretty sure, is something you can criticize, but even in that moment, I was like, you just died to literally all of the information that you had on the table right in front of you. So, yeah.
And that goes into game 4 too, because it was another instance of tactical kind of getting caught out, because that was another game that it looked like it was going to go south for C9 super fast, right? And then, holy shit, the Zoe bubble from Perkz manages to hit the Xayah in the middle of the composition. And to C9's credit, the up was also amazing when they realized that bubble had hit, and they just dumped the Hecarim and Gragas ultimates on top of the Xayah before she could like get out of it. But if that bubble doesn't hit, I think C9 loses this series.
They lose it. They for sure lose it. And like that was not the first time. I think there was the fight before that too, when Sven assassinated the Xayah. I think she walked into bubble. Like how to look back at that one, but she definitely got slept when she shouldn't have gotten slept, and they were winning that fight. So it was like 2 fights in a row where, you know, tactical is the target. He gets picked off like by a Zoe Wobble. The first one was pretty bad. The second one is rough.
That's unlucky.
Yeah, that one he just didn't see it, and
he
like
was in the middle of 2 other players. Like there's no reasonable way he could have predicted that would hit him.
While he's walking away, it's like the Gnar that's in the way. So if you're playing in that position, you're like, this bubble is not going to hit me. But the moment it gets thrown out, Gnar is out of the way. You're literally the target. So like, that one's tough. He's definitely thinking about it. He even tweeted about it too. I'm pretty sure about like his deaths yesterday. So like, those are the moments that you just kind of like it hurts because you have the draft. The gameplay is looking great under the circumstances, like the shittiest circumstances alive, and Team Liquid could have done it.
Yeah, and this is why I'm really like concerned about C9 because game 1 they definitely should have won and they threw it. Game 3 they definitely should have. That was the TF game.
Yes, that's one that probably should have lost.
Yeah, game 2, the TF game. They had a huge lead and then they almost threw it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Game 3, I think, was just really well played by Team Liquid, and they kind of had things on lock and had a very cool draft. Game 4, Team Liquid should have won and did and TL threw it. And then Game 5, this is the one where Cloud9 was just like that. To me, this was the only game that Cloud9 actually played well throughout this entire series.
But it was also, by the way, think about this, because I don't know if you noticed this sentiment. As soon as the lock-in began, because like, listen, there's a trend that everyone knows, which is a lot of the NA people, obviously these people on the show with me right now excluded, but a lot of NA people, it's not that they're like totally insecure, but they always try to like mildly downplay a lot of the best EU people. I know a lot of people, this is what triggers them about Mark, so he does do it a lot. Like, he always finds some angle to like not believe that like Caps could be as good as like Showmaker or something, you know, like, there's always some angle he has, right? So I know a lot of people were like low-key sort of like looking for any flaws in Perkz at all. So even in the lock-in, people were making fun of some of the picks and how he played out. Anytime Cloud9 ever lost a game or came close to looking not that good, they would comment, "Oh, it's not stomping." They set like an impossible precedent for him to have to reach, because he's supposed to be the Western GOAT. You know, he's got all those titles, and a lot of people, sadly, because he played ADC, don't really know Perkz mid lane style. So stupidly, they think he's supposed to be Caps and that he just, you know, fucking 1v1 solo kills you 24/7 and roams the whole map. That was like never Perkz' game anyway. But I tell you what, everyone who laughed at the price tag that Jack played or what he tried to do in this offseason, or maybe they're just a TSM fan, so they just laugh at anything apparently except themselves. They don't have mirrors in their houses. They're all vampires. They were never alive anyway. What's not dead man never dies. So when they do this, right, I tell you what, if you all were laughing, you weren't laughing in this game, were you? Because this game, Jack may as well have just basically just sat back like this, like, all right, this is why I got you. Go on then. And then he just literally shit on your soul. Like, Team Liquid wasn't even in this game. This is ridiculous.
It was,
and it's
so
not, by the way,
good.
It's not like all the kills he got were just easy. It was like going for fucking kill. He was like flash doing shit. Like, this is legit. This game. This was what you expect when you bring someone like that to this region.
The level 1 was just a thing of beauty. You know, it's not the first time, obviously, that we've seen some of these like level 1 Scion tricks. Like, this is kind of a classic, but the way it could not have gone better. Like Alphari walking up to the wave as Cho'Gath, right? Which definitely resulted in his death and then like snowballed into a second death. The fact that the draft, so what was so cool, I think, about this is that they didn't even think they were going to kill Alphari level 1. I think they thought they were going to kill Alphari level 2 with Alistar and Tristana. Once you have the Alistar combo and you have the jump as well on Tristana, right? So the fact that they got it level 1 gifted to them, and then also were able to get a kill level 2. I think it was at level 2, it was level 2 or 3, was just absolutely nuts for Cloud9. Yeah. The fact that they got all like 3/4 of the jungle for free. The fact that Fudge had the level advantage, even things like the response was super weird because they sent Core JJ top lane. This was the worst part. So they send Core JJ top lane with Alfari, right? So it's a 1v1 between Tactical on Kai'Sa and Fudge on Sion in the bot lane, which turns into a 2v2 with the junglers. But Blaber already has such an insane advantage, and he's playing, Udyr with an edge early on. Yeah. So you're just not going to win that 2v2. And then Liquid opt into that 2v2 and then die there as well. Meanwhile, Perkz, as you're saying, is just going nuts in the mid lane. Like this game, the gameplay, it could not have gone more perfectly for Cloud9. This is the shit you dream of from a level 1.
It's amazing because, like, just conceptually, if you play it perfectly, like, there are ways you can deal with a Sion doing this, of course. Like, if you just don't expect it because, Sion is just a pick. Like, people will just pick Sion in any composition. It's not going to tip a hat in what they're going to try and do. Like, people will talk about Tristana, but, like, you can do that with any, pushing AD. So, hats off to the coaching staff, like Veigar, V2, Max, Reignover, Mithy. Like, they got coach of the split. A lot of times they like to meme the shit out of it because it's literally just the first place team that gets it.
Of course, yes.
Yeah. And it technically did happen here, but like I think it was still deserving. I think like they deserved it. But yeah, I mean, like this was great. It's gonna instantly give your jungle a huge advantage because now you just you took 3 quadrants. Hacker Room is literally nothing. Like the enemy jungle, like Armeo has nothing to work with, and the top lane has advantage because like Sion gets full, like while even if Cho'Gath didn't die, like he can't actually have access to the wave while Sion is going to have access eventually and has now like jungle creeps underneath him. So like I thought it was a really ingenious one. You're eventually going to swap back. I remember Rogue did this like previous year. And it's something that was done previous. I think Penton in Australia also did this in Oceania. It's something where it's like they had it in. They said that they had the strat, and they were just waiting for like a right time to use it. And goddamn, it's like it was literally the last instance.
With the comps that they had and everything, it just couldn't have been a better time to use it, right? When you have the stronger early game jungler, you have a limited mobility top laner. Not only that, but just the circumstances. You're playing against the sub jungler who is definitely going to be thrown for a loop about what to do in this game because you're trying to play, if you're Liquid, you're trying to play as standard as possible and you don't have perfect comms because there's a new guy in there, especially a guy who is crucial to early game comms in the jungle position, right? Mm-hmm. And so then you just throw everything into chaos. And how do you even deal with this, right? You get all these kills just raining in across the map. You're making poor decisions about where to send your jungler later on, which is resulting in more deaths for your team. I mean, this was truly like, this was one of the most, I think, conceptually solid and perfect executions of a level 1 that I have ever seen. It was
really, but Monty, it was in the LCS, so everyone just says all the games are trash. What are you doing right now? Don't you know Koreans play that? Whatever, yeah.
Look, I don't know if they considered all of these factors when they decided to pull the trigger on this strategy, but for all intents and purposes, it was a perfect.
They should say they did, by the way, just for the sake of like the story. Just say you planned it all. It was like 500 IQ. It was like fucking like whatever episode 14 of Death Note or something. All according to Kakak or whatever. Yeah, whatever.
It was really great. So like it's games like these where now I start dreaming about like, okay, what can Cloud9 actually do in MSI? Like versus like the top teams, LPL, LCK, because yeah, I mean North America. I said this when I was on broadcast, but like. Competition is what matters. Like a competition within your own region. So like if you're being challenged consistently, and then also just like theory crafting, you need to be able to think about like the game on a deeper level. And I thought this was a really, really well thought out game. And it shows that when they're in practice, when they're in scrims, they're like thinking of like ways to kind of abuse the patch or what can they actually do that the enemy team may not expect. So bring me them best of ones. bring me the international best of ones. That's what people should be hearing.
I've got a piece of trivia for you that might actually blow your mind because not many people have actually ever sat down and really thought about what this means, right? In the context of what we've just discussed. So I'll actually ask you, I'll see if you know. So either of you can answer this question, right? Perkz is considered by many the Western GOAT. I mean, you just look how many times he's bloody won the LCS, EU/LCS/LEC. He's won MSI. He's obviously got a fantastic record at Worlds, even though he hasn't won it. Like, unbelievable. Like, he's always been in 2 MSI finals. If people don't know, he was in the one when Mithy was still in the team. Like, a ridiculous resume, right? In fact, he's almost like the consensus. It's basically, unless you just like have recency bias and you just think the last few years of Caps is better, it's between Caps and Perkz for most people, right? So do either of you know what career accomplishment that a player can have is he missing? Do any of you know? As the GOAT? No, not that one, obviously.
Has he never been MVP of a
He's never won a single MVP in his whole career. Are you ready for the second detail? The second detail is the killer, Monty. The second one is the killer. That's not it in itself. By the way, that in itself, absurd. So you're the GOAT, but not for one split ever did people ever think you were the best player. That's nuts, but the second one's mental. His jungler has won the MVP 4 times. And they were 3 different people. It was Trick, Jankos, and now Blaber.
Interesting.
This guy's so good. You all think the other guy's the best. He makes the other guy look so good. You give him the fucking MVP.
How salty does Perkz have to be at this point?
Well, here's the thing. I'm sure he's such a G. He's the guy where it's like, I'll just take the trophy and all the money and the GOAT status, and you guys can have the MVP. You know what, actually, Trick? You keep those 2 MVPs, mate. I'll take MSI. You know, I'm sure he just does that instead. Like,
see, for me, Perkz is undeniably the GOAT Western player. Like, I don't even, in my mind, it's not really particularly close.
Especially because he's got the intangibles, hasn't he? So he's kind of like got the complete package. I mean, he even, in this tournament again, maintained that bonkers Game 4 record. I'll probably do a piece on it soon. Off the top of my head, I think his Game 4 record over his career in Best of 5 series is something mental. Like, it's going to now be like 28-5 or something nuts. Like, humans don't do this. Like, I mean, I'm not even joking. Go to any region, even go to some region you don't respect, like, I don't know, fucking PCS. I'll guarantee there's no player with a record like this. Like, on any contextual, like, relative level, that is nuts. That you just always give him Game 4 no matter what.
Especially when he created in this game that they should have lost. He created the play.
He had
that
the
won
game
them
play.
Game 4.
Yeah, he had the turnaround play, exactly.
I mean, that's a legendary. That's going to go down as a legendary play. It's
Yes.
just so stupidly unlikely that he was able to do that bubble. That is,
Put it this
a
way,
crazy play.
Considering people have just run this meme / trope into the ground, that is the actual appropriate moment where you show that initial sequence where they come in the mid lane, Monty, and then just as that bubble hits fucking tactical, you pause it, you go, you pull the fucking record off and go, you're probably wondering how I got here. And it's like, yeah, that's the one time that meme's appropriate, because I bet he was thinking that, like, I was supposed to win the LCS off this shit. What is this?